Some things just don't go together. Cats and bathtubs, karaoke and sobriety, and apparently add this one to the list: the most biologically measured man on the planet and a stomach that decided to eat itself. Last week, a man who spent millions of dollars trying to reverse his own aging posted this: 9.4 million views in a few days. Bryan got a lot of genuine support, but the negative comments are what caught my attention. You need sun. Stop getting vaccines, Bryan, and go carnivore. What are the odds one of the experimental treatments could have caused something like this? Almost like treating you body, like a science experiment is catching up to you. Hope it was worth the clicks. Nobody in that comment section is a gastroenterologist, yet somehow everyone had a diagnosis. But here's the thing, his actual doctors didn't. It took a full medical team 11 years to figure out what was wrong, and even then, they're not entirely sure what caused it. It could be genetics, environment, most likely both. But strangers online figured that out at a glance, with none of that information. This video isn't about whether Bryan Johnson's diet caused the disease. It's about why we needed it to be the case. In the 1960s, a psychologist, Melvin Lerner, watched health practitioners treat their mentally ill patients, and what he observed was quite disturbing. Over and over again, people who were supposed to help the mentally ill patients were finding subtle ways to blame them for their condition. That observation turned into what we now call the just world hypothesis. It's when people need to believe that actions have appropriate and predictable outcomes. Good behavior gets rewarded and bad behavior gets punished. It's less of a fact about the world and more a fact about human psychology. It's much easier to live in a world that's predictable rather than one that is not. Here's where it gets specific to what we just saw. If Bryan Johnson, a millionaire who spent a lot of money on his health and tracking everything that he puts into his body, still got the disease, what's threatened isn't his sense of control, it's theirs. It's the people's who comment about him. Their sense of control is threatened. Because if that level of effort doesn't guarantee health, that means that our far lesser effort doesn't guarantee it either. Our gym routine, our diet, our multivitamins or lack thereof, none of it guarantees a wanted outcome. Most people don't sit with that. Instead, they go and find a mistake. Whether he went too extreme or not extreme enough, whether it's the sunlight or the vegan diet, it doesn't really matter. If you can locate one specific thing you did wrong, the rule still survives. Effort equals safety. You just have to not make his mistakes. The blame isn't really about him. It's maintenance work on our own sense of control. Lerner actually built an experiment around this. He had subjects watch a person receive electric shocks without any ability to intervene. Initially, people had an urge to help the person receiving the shocks, but eventually they started shifting their thinking to the fact that these people receiving the shocks must have deserved them somehow. Not because of any new evidence, because the fact that bad things happen to normal people for no reason is much harder to accept than the fact that they might have deserved it. And people don't go quiet or indifferent when this happens. Research on this specific bias has found the opposite effect. When someone's belief in a just world gets threatened, they don't just tolerate reading about somebody's misfortune, they actually seek it out more. It becomes something more enjoyable. The German Schadenfreude isn't a side effect, but a release valve. There's a version of this that shows the mechanism even more clearly. Consider lottery winners. You would expect a story of somebody getting a few $1,000,000 for nothing to be a nice story, but it usually doesn't stay like that. After a few years, the same rotation of headlines appear. Somebody got bankrupt, divorced, estranged from their family, just worse than they were before. Some of that does happen, but most winners are fine. Just boringly fine. And that version of the story barely circulates at all. The ruin story is the one that gets repeated, remembered, and half-invented sometimes. That's because free money breaks the formula the same way an unfair illness does it as well, just from the other direction. The rule was supposed to be that good outcomes come from effort. So an outcome that comes from nothing has to be paid for eventually, which is the real reason why Bryan Johnson's comments section filled up with confident diagnoses from people who aren't doctors. For most people, it wasn't about knowing what caused the disease. They needed him to be wrong about something specific, because the alternative is much harder to accept. There's one more piece to this that is specific to Johnson in a way that it wouldn't be if this was a normal person. Johnson isn't just healthy, that's not what he's selling. He's trying to reverse aging, not just manage it, but to beat it. And that's a very different claim than saying, I just go to the gym. Humans have been telling the same story about that claim for thousands of years. Icarus doesn't get punished for flying, he gets punished for flying too close to the sun, for going past the specific limit that was set for him. The builders of Babel don't get scattered for building a tower. They get scattered for building one that can reach heaven. Victor Frankenstein doesn't get destroyed for being a scientist. He gets destroyed for trying to conquer death, for doing the one thing that was off limits for him. Different centuries, different cultures, but the same story. Reach past the human limit, and the story will find a way to put you back inside it. Notice how differently people talk about a billionaire funding rockets versus one funding a lab chasing immortality. The rocket gets called ambitious, while the immortality chase gets called something more like obscene. Same audacity, but only one of them is reaching for something that shouldn't be reached at all. Although Elon Musk also gets his fair share of criticism. So when Johnson posted that his stomach was eating itself, most of the replies wasn't really about health advice or veganism or any of the specifics. It was more of a relief. He thought he was exempt, and now he learned that he wasn't. And here's what's worth noticing. The phenomenon isn't different from what we just talked about. It's the same engine. The need for efforts to guarantee safety and the need for limits to hold. Either way, something needs to come along and put the rule back into place. Nobody gets out. Not even him. Which raises the obvious question. If this is about punishing somebody who tries to defy nature, then it should only happen to people who make that exact claim. It shouldn't happen to an ordinary running coach or to a mom posting a gym selfie. It does anyway. In 1984, the most famous health guru in America was a man named Jim Fixx. He wrote a book called The Complete Book of Running, sold millions of copies, and almost single-handedly convinced a whole generation of out-of-shape Americans that jogging was the answer to your weight, to your stress, and specifically to heart disease. He was the original "if I can do it, anybody can" story. Overweight chain smoker magazine editor transforms himself into a lean marathoner. On July 20th, 1984, Jim went for his daily run on a quiet road in Vermont. He didn't finish it. A massive heart attack. 52 years old, dead on the side of the road that he ran almost every day. You can guess what happens next. See, running doesn't save you. The whole thing was a lie. Some of the coverage at the time literally asked, did jogging kill Jim Fixx? Like it was a verdict. The real story from his autopsy was this. His father died from a heart attack at 43. He smoked 2 packs of cigarettes every day before starting running. He had a heart condition he was born with. And on top of that, he told his friends about his chest tightness during runs. A textbook warning sign. One doctor who reviewed the case concluded that if anything, jogging probably have bought him another decade. The tidy ironic headline, "A running guru dies running," was actually backwards. But nobody was interested in backwards. They wanted the verdict by dinner time. Now fast forward to something much closer to now. A fitness influencer named Maria Kong went viral for posting a picture of herself in shape next to the caption, "What's your excuse?" It hit 16 million views, and for a while, she was the face of the no-excuse fitness culture. Then in her 40s, she was diagnosed with a stage 4 colon cancer. In her own words, for a period afterwards, she was saying, "Why me? I did everything right." And a colon surgeon who spoke publicly about her case said something that is worth sitting with. He treated plenty of young patients who stayed active, ate well, and still got the disease. Because sometimes the disease doesn't check anybody's resume first. These cases are quite similar. Somebody builds an identity around control and then gets hit by something that nobody controls. And the audience reflexively goes and looks for mistakes that would have proven that the rule still exists. Which tells us something important. This isn't a social media thing. This isn't a internet made us mean thing. It was happening with 1984 magazine headlines and dinner table conversations, decades before anybody could reply to a post in real time. The tool changed, the reflex didn't. Here's the uncomfortable version of everything we've discussed. If nobody did anything wrong, not Bryan Johnson, not Jim Fixx, not Maria Kong, then there's no mistake left for you to avoid making. No protective ritual, no supplement stack, no diet, no tracking of what you put in your body that would put you safely on the other side of the line. Because the line doesn't exist the same way the comment section needed it to be. That's the thing 9 million people were protecting themselves from. Not was he wrong, whether effort buys safety at all. And to be clear, I'm not saying to optimize nothing. Diet and exercise does help a lot of people, and doctors are not lying about that. What breaks is the personal guarantee version of that. The version that says, if I do enough of the right things, I am specifically exempt. That belief was never really true. So the thing worth taking from this video is that you don't have control. We are not in control, and sometimes things happen, bad things happen to good people for no reason. I'm sure now that I finished filming this video that seeing somebody successful experience something like this is somewhat attractive because of comparison. It sheds light on your own situation, and if that person just continued being successful, then it sort of sheds a shadow onto us. So that's that. But overall, I think it's a very interesting psychological phenomenon and situation. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.